Hey guys, what is going on? Lucky here, and today I bring you the top 5 most broken / overpowered tanks in World of Tanks. So before we're gonna get started, I first need to mention that this list is partially based on my personal opinion. So please don't crucify me in the comment section for forgetting or misplacing a tank that you would have picked. So with that out of the way, let's get started with the number 5 position on this list. So at number 5 we have the T-54. So to kick things off in this list we have arguably the best and most overpowered tier 9 medium tank in the game, where all the rest of the tier 9 mediums are fairly nicely balanced by making sacrifices for their strengths. For example, the Batchat 25T AP sacrificing pretty much all of its armor and accuracy for above average mobility and an autoloader. But apparently the Russians kinda missed this concept, since this tier 9 reincarnation of the Russian bias pretty much has got it all. The T-54 has got good mobility, a great 100mm gun with above average DPM that's capable of firing 330mm penetrating heat rounds, and to top it all off, exceptional armor for a tier 9 medium, with an almost impenetrable turret and an upper hull that's even thicker than its tier 10 bigger brothers, the T-62A and the Object 140. Literally the only cons I could find is a little bit below average accuracy, which can be compensated by equipment and a good skilled crew, and only 5 degrees of gun depression. But if those are really the only sacrifices this thing has got to make for all the rest of its insane pros, then I feel really bad for all the tier 9 mediums who have got to make much greater sacrifices for their specialities. And I feel even worse for all the tier 7 tank with about 175mm of penetration who have to fight this thing. So mainly considering that, the T-54 is a true and worthy number 5 position on this list. Then moving on to the number 4 spot, where we have the devil of the tier 3 battlefield itself. It's the Panther 2J. So I don't know what Wargaming was thinking when they decided it was a good idea to release this premium tank. I guess the guy who made the decision probably banged his head against the door frame before doing so. But anyways, this thing is hands down the most overpowered tier 3 tank in the entire game. But why, you might ask? Well, mainly because of its ridiculous armor, since this thing has got almost the same armor profile as a flipping KV-1. And yes, the KV-1 is a tier 5 heavy tank, which is already known for having very good armor for its tier. Well, take that same armor and slap it on a tier 3 light tank and boom, you've got yourself God mode in a tank. Because if this thing manages to get itself in a tier 3 battle, it becomes pretty much unstoppable, since hardly any tier 3 gun can penetrate its armor. The main downside of the Panther 2J is its penetration though, because it only uses a tier 1 gun with a very poor penetration on its standard rounds. But that's very easily to compensate for if you just fire full out gold rounds. And considering the Panther 2J can only be obtained by purchasing 100 euros worth of gold at some occasions, I think that most of the Panther 2J owners won't give a damn and just spam full out gold in this thing. So because of all that, I think the Panther 2J rightfully claims the number 4 spot on this list. Then at number 3 we have yet another member of the Russian bias. It's the Object 252U Defender. So if you play your tier 8 tanks quite often, you have undoubtedly already encountered the Defender at least once. So in that case, I don't even have to explain to you how ridiculously overpowered this thing actually is, since you most likely have already found out the hard way. But for the people who haven't made their way to tier 8 yet, the Defender is so ridiculously powerful that if you would move it to tier 9 and you wouldn't change any single stat of it, it would still be a very competitive tier 9 tank, since this thing has got pretty much the exact same hull as an IS-7, and yes, that's indeed a very competitive tier 10 Russian heavy tank. It also has the shared highest alpha damage out of any tier 8 heavy tank, together with a very healthy 225mm of standard AP penetration that's easily capable of challenging some tier 10 heavy tanks frontally, and it's also fairly mobile for a heavy tank. So overall, if you have to fight this nightmare in a standard tier 8 heavy tank like a T-32 that only has 192mm of of penetration, well, I wish you all the best of luck because you're really going to need it. And don't even let me get started on how hopeless tier 6 and 7 tanks are about taking on this thing head to head. And mainly because of that, the Defender truly claims the number 3 spot on this list. Then moving on to the number 2 spot on this list, you either love it or you hate it, it's the enemy tank king itself, it's the Type 5 Heavy. So where do I start? Well, let's start off with the fact that this thing is by far the most easy to play and noob friendly tier 10 tank in the entire game. Why, you might ask? Well, that's simply because it's just stupidly overpowered, otherwise it wouldn't be on the number 2 position of this list anyways. Mainly because this Japanese behemoth doesn't give a damn about your 300mm of turret armor or your very well angled and thick upper hull armor. No, if this thing wants to hurt you, you're just going to suffer, no matter how good your armor is. And that's because the Type 5 uses a 15cm derp gun that's only capable of firing high explosive rounds. And I think everyone pretty much knows that high explosive rounds will always do damage even if they don't penetrate. So with the Type 5 Heavy in particular, you will pretty much always end up with an average damage roll of about 400 to 500 hit points per shot, no matter where you hit your target. And guess what? If that's not enough for you, you can easily press the 2 key to very casually increase your alpha damage from 1100 to 1400 without any drawbacks. Yes, very good balanced wargaming, which means that you will do around 500 to 600 damage with a non-penetrating hit. And if you manage to get lucky and actually penetrate your target with those mini nukes, you will pretty much shave off half the hit points of any tier 10 vehicle in the game. And if that isn't enough for you already, then this thing also is stupidly well armored as well, with at its weakest frontally 260mm of armor without any angling applied, which means that it's 50-50 for most tier 10 guns if they're going to penetrate you if they're firing their standard ammunition. So what most of the people do, they don't even try and just spam all the coal they have at it. And to be honest, you can't really blame them for that, since the Type 5 Heavy has absolutely zero frontal weak spots. So wargaming really don't give us another option. But how can any tank possibly be more overpowered than the Type 5? Well, brace yourself guys, because now we are moving on to the number 1 spot of this list. So now, the moment you probably all have been waiting for, the number 1 spot and the most overpowered tank in World of Tanks has to be the Object 268 version 4. So the Object 268 version 4 is still a rather new addition to the game, since it came in together with the Object 430U and the Object 705A, somewhere around December. And we are totally not going to overbias the Russian Tech Tree patch, also known as patch 9.22, because most of those Russian tier 10 tanks were quite a lot stronger than their original counterparts. But one of them completely threw the definition of balance out of the window and just screams, "Fuck you, we are Russia and Russia can never lose yet." And that's also basically what happened most of the battles playing in this thing. Because to start off, this thing has basically got the most ridiculous armor on any tier 10 tank destroyer that I have ever seen, with a lower plate which is supposed to be a weak spot of a flipping 300mm thick. That just makes the T110 E3 look like a sheet of paper. But then you might think, well, the armor is not that big of a deal since it's so slow that you can just outmaneuver it quite easily even in heavy tanks. Oh no, wait, I forgot to mention that this thing cruises around at 55 kilometers per hour. So, yeah, good luck outmaneuvering that. And even if you manage to get to its sides, it's very hard to keep it tracked and do damage at the same time, since it's got the same whole concept as the old Object 257. Oh my god. I think I can't track him and damage him at the same time. Which, you know, also had that little problem where all the community went nuts about, that you couldn't track it and damage it at the same time. But they completely forgot that the 268 version 4 had it as well, and they just completely left it in. But nevertheless, to top it all off, it also has a fairly decent gun as well. That's quite competitive with most of the other tier 10 tank destroyer guns. Which altogether means that the Object 268 version 4 is pretty much as noob friendly as the Type 5 Heavy. And if you want to see an example of that, I highly recommend you to watch World of Crunch episode 4, since that video is a perfect example of a noob getting 10k damage in this thing without any effort whatsoever. So I'll leave a link to that video in the description down below in case you're interested. But overall, this thing is the complete tank destroyer package, since you can just sit in front of any enemy tank you see, and you can just shit on them with your high DPM tank destroyer gun, while they struggle to pen your ridiculously OP armor even with premium ammo. And that is pretty much why the Object 268 version 4 claims the crown of the most overpowered tank in World of Tanks. So guys, that was pretty much all for this top 5 video. So if you enjoyed it or found it useful, please consider giving it a like. I would highly appreciate it. Also, if you're new to the channel and you like my videos, make sure to smack that subscribe button so you will stay up to date with all my future content. And also, let me know in the comment section down below what your top 5 most overpowered tanks is. I'm very curious on your opinion as well. But for now, I'm just going to say have an awesome day and I'll catch you guys later.